and welcome back to The Other Side. My name is Ember Hobie. Each week I focus on a different step of recovery and share my experience on how the 12-step healed my marriage. This week I'm on step 8, which is make a written list of all persons we have harmed and become willing to make restitution to them. The key principle is prepare to make amends. This video is going to take a little bit of a shift. Our marriage was in recovery, and we had gone through a big transformation and things were going great. And I think there for a little while, both Sam and I were wondering when the next shoe was going to drop and if it was going to stick, if we really were cured. And like I mentioned in my last video, I think a good marriage is a marriage that is in recovery, where it's a constant cycle of repair work and healing and riding the wave of good, and the cycle is going to come around again. And we had about 3 years of really good, full of a lot of repair and do-overs. But I think here on step 8, I'm going to share with you where we hit a bump, and some relatable topics in the book is people often get caught in terrible cycles of mutual resentment with each other. To break these cycles, someone has to be willing to forgive. And in step 8, we begin to relate to ourselves, others, and life with a new heart. We begin to feel peace in our lives rather than contention and negativity. So that contention and negativity plagued our marriage. The longer we were married, the more resentments I had that just built up. And then this is where I was. And I remember, I think around year 8 or 9, Sam coming to me and saying, like it was so obvious to him, Ember, you just need to forgive me. And that made me mad because it wasn't just a simple fix, and I didn't believe him. And he has always worked the 12 steps in his life, so he knows what all of the action steps lead to different behavior and a change of heart. I didn't. When he would say you need to repent and forgive, I hated those words because I couldn't relate personally to needing to repent, because repenting meant I had done something wrong, a sin. Now, I didn't feel like I lived a sinful life. I didn't think there was a need to repent, and repenting in my mind was a very serious, it was seriously attached to sin, where you have to, go and confess. And that didn't seem to fit my experience, how I couldn't see where that would fit in our marriage and how that would help us, because I didn't feel like I was sinning. Like I mentioned before, the sins of omission and commission. I was definitely locked in there, and I couldn't see my own blind spots. If we find forgiveness in our hearts for those who have caused us hurt and injury, we will rise to a higher level of self-esteem and well-being. So Sam was right. He was absolutely right. I just didn't know how to forgive him. I didn't know how to repent. I didn't know how to see myself. And so our conflict in our marriage continued for another decade. All the while I thought I was good. I was religious. I was always going to church. I was a typical, I wasn't doing anything wrong. I wasn't sinning, but I wasn't forgiving my husband. I was so deep in denial, and Satan had me in a sweet spot where I thought all the problems and issues were with Sam. So the previous videos lead up to all of this, that explain all of that. Now, so this is step 8. Is that what I said? Yes, step 8. This, we did a good job of coming clean with our issues, to a certain extent. That's what I want to talk about right now. So our marriage was in recovery, and we had a little bit of a relapse, if you will. And this happened the last 6 months of Sam's life. We were good until we weren't good. In step 8, we make a written list of all persons we have harmed and become willing to make restitution with them. Okay, so I'm applying this to our marriage. So that would be me and Sam, recognizing my fault in the marriage and how I had wronged Sam, and ask him for forgiveness. And I hope I have done a good enough job up until this point of expressing how I came to that realization, where it was very subtle. And I think because I was in the right frame of mind, in a humble state to a certain extent, that God was able to humble me even more and then expose myself. And it was done in a very loving way. Because God knows I'm delicate. He knows. Sam was just upfront, direct. You just need to forgive me. And if God approached me like that, like he went my pace. And I believe that he works that way for everyone. Sam needs a very direct, hit me upside the head and I'll repent. That is how Sam works. So actually that's a good leeway into where I'm going with this. I think I mentioned it in the last video, but on Sam's birthday, his birthday is at the end of December, and the few months leading up to that, like kind of through the middle of summer toward the fall, something shifted in Sam, and he and I think why it shifted was because it was time for him to get moving, because God's hand was in this. Our marriage, we had, we're still basking in the wonderful glow of our renewal, and we don't have intimacy problems. It's fantastic. And I'm laughing at myself thinking, why would I ever make up an excuse not to be intimate with Sam? Because that was my previous life. And I just wasn't in that space anymore. Like, I didn't need to make up an excuse. It was natural. It was organic. What I had been trying to figure out why it wasn't that way for so long. And we finally got there, where being intimate was just a part of our life. And it was not hard. And it was something that we both looked forward to. And it was so wonderful to not have that stress placed on it, and just to enjoy it. And so that was short-lived, because with that, if you can imagine, Sam had just experienced a major transformation in sexuality. I'm kind of going from his perspective here. So he's a very sexual person, and was exposed to sex at a very young age. He told me he remembered seeing his mom having sex with men, multiple men, not at the same time, but she was a single mom, and she was very sexual and comfortable in her sexuality. And so he saw her, he saw her naked all the time, and it was just no big deal. There was not a heavy shame that maybe a lot of Utah families have around sexuality, just from the culture. That wasn't in his home. And that is actually one thing that I picked up sort of on Sam as a teenager, that when we weren't even dating, because I was his admirer from afar, and knew that there was something about him and us, but also knowing that it wasn't our time. And I was okay with that, and super intimidated by him at the same time, but totally in love with him. And I remember seeing him I watched him go through several different girlfriends, and like that was Sam Hobie. He was a flirt. He was fun, and he was great personality, very handsome, very athletic. He was my type, absolutely my type. I was 2 years younger than him, and so as a 15-year-old, I saw him with girls and I didn't really know him. Then as a 16-year-old, anyway, point is, I saw him date a lot of girls, and I did notice how comfortable he seemed to be in affection. I don't know why that word was so hard to come up with. Okay, so the last 6 months of Sam's life took a turn, and God's hand was in it, because I'm in the cemetery. There's no one around, but I feel like I need to roll up my windows to have this conversation. And I want to be so delicate about how this message comes across, because it's so beautiful, but I hope I do it justice. But I started to notice that Sam was using sex as a coping mechanism. On Sam's birthday, we were in conflict, and had been, things just were going down for a couple of months. They just kind of kept getting worse, and a resolve wasn't taking place. The part in here where it's like, to break these cycles, someone has to be willing to forgive. I was willing to be that person to forgive, because I knew that resentments were poison to me. That was my weakness. Like, I took that upon myself to be the peacemaker in our marriage, but in a different way, not in the avoidance, because that's how I did it before. It was the avoidance to be a peacemaker. In our second round, I valued the peace that we had and the clean slate that we had, and I took it upon myself to keep that slate clean, because I'm the one who's affected mostly by it. If there were some issues, like Sam was quick to Sam was able to have sex if he had resentments. I wasn't. So I knew I needed to keep that slate clean. And as in all marriages, arguments happen. And I'm going to define the argument that we had frequently. I'm going to call it the eternal argument. It's the argument that comes up no matter what you're fighting about. You're not even fighting about that issue. You're fighting about something else, and then that issue comes up again. And I found a pattern. I found this happening in our relationship in this last 6 months. Something kept coming up that if we weren't resolving something, or we had a new problem, this extra problem came on top of it, and it kept showing up. And so we made a new rule. And I made this rule that we have to have a clean slate. And so when I saw that this topic kept coming up, I'm like, okay, we need to address this. We're going to sit down and we are going to address this. And we are not going to end this discussion until we both agree that it's done. We talked about it for hours, because I think it's important that you get everything out. Because sometimes Sam and I were quick to just get to the amends that we really didn't get to the root of things. And so those are what I'm talking about. That when they come up again, it's like, okay, we're going to identify this, we're going to talk about it, and we're going to kill it. The rule is you're not allowed to bring it up again. It's dead. But you don't leave that conversation until you both agree, shake hands, this conversation is dead. This topic, this argument, this issue is dead. We're done. We don't have anything else to say. We don't have anything else to add again. If that issue did come up again, he could do one of two things. we open it up again. And if that's what he wanted to do, then I would only have that conversation with him, or he would only have that conversation with me, with our marriage therapist, because it was clear that our hours of hashing it out and, you know, trying to work through it together, and then agreed that we were at a good spot with it, and then let it die. And then if it was resurrected, it needed to go to a professional to really knock it out. Like, otherwise we would just do that cycle forever. So that was one option. The second option was, he's got to let it go. I've got to let it go. We agreed, we ended it, we got to let it go. So this, that's what I call, you know, a marriage in repair. That's a healthy marriage. Things are going to come up, you deal with it properly, or you kill it. So our relapse came where I had to put up boundaries and with our sexuality. And Sam was working through, he had started going to a trauma therapist, working through some things of his past. His childhood was, he had a rough childhood. And now that we had, you know, dug up all of our issues in our marriage, and our marriage was flourishing, it allowed time for other weeds of Sam's life to start to grow. And he had the capacity to focus on that, on them, which of course contributed to problems in our marriage. So since our marriage was doing better, now God gave him an opportunity to start focusing on some other demons, is what I explained it last week. Sam needed to work on some other demons that were still hanging around, and that had to do with his childhood, had to do with some trauma. So he had been seeing a therapist, and that was working some, he had a physical reaction to this difficult trauma therapy. And our sex life kind of had a different shift to it, where I could tell that it wasn't about us anymore, and sex was becoming a fix-it, because he was dealing with some hard things. And I think he was intentionally coming to me to, you know, to get the healing and what a healthy relationship, the connection, sexuality. It's not my responsibility to heal Sam with my sexuality. I could choose to if I wanted to. I do believe that is a beautiful opportunity, that women can do that for their husbands, if they're in that space. And I kind of felt like that's where we were a little bit, and that's okay, because I could see that it was healing to him. But then it changed. It was not healing to me. And so I wasn't going through those hard things, so I was seeing clearly. I was seeing like something's off here, and he was in conflict with a lot of people in his life. He was easily offended, cut off a lot of his friends, a lot of his family, like people who he used to, you know, keep tabs on and keep up with. Like, he just kind of was, he just shut everybody out. He kept me close, but then even our relationship was being affected by it. And he just had this, he was carrying some heavy stuff, and I had to put a boundary on our sexuality. I was not available to him whenever he needed me, because it wasn't serving that purpose anymore. It was something different, and I could see that, and I was okay with that. You know, previous marriage, I just feel absolutely used. I don't want to feel used in our intimacy, and I'm seeing, you know, some things only because I knew what it looked like to be right in our first marriage, I didn't know. So it was always just so confusing, and I felt used, but yet felt like there was so much confusion. Now I knew what a healthy, thriving sexual relationship was. And I knew this was not it. So I was able to see it more clearly and be like, okay, anyway, I set a boundary. And so my boundary was, for 1 week, you pick 3 days, we'll have sex. And then the next week you pick 2 days. And then the next week we go back to 3 days. Like, I needed a break. That's what I needed. He needed more sex. I needed less sex. So I was like, okay, we're going to do an on and off thing. You pick on days, I'll have the off days. And then the next week it's heavy on the off days. And then the next week it's heavy on the on days. Like, I was trying to find a happy balance there so that I wasn't so overwhelmed, because I think just naturally what he was going through with this emotional trauma stuff, he wanted to escape in intimacy with me. But it wasn't serving that purpose for me. And so we had to shift gears a little bit. And that freaked him out, because he felt like I was, putting handcuffs on him in our marriage, and which, yeah, it kind of felt that way. I was looking at it as a boundary of love. I didn't want to shut him out. My plan wasn't to shut him out and have no sex. I was trying to find that happy balance between us. And he was in conflict with a lot of people. And so now add me to it. And so that even made his our on days frustrating to him, because he felt like he was an appointment, and just because that was so not what our relationship was in the thriving part. And so it was hurtful. It was hard for him to kind of take 10 steps back, is what it felt like to me too. But I wasn't building up resentments, and I wanted to be there for him, but not every single day. So that was my way of being there for him, as, okay, you pick 3 days, and then the rest of the days are off. And then the next week, it was a give and take to stay connected. That kind of backfired, just because he panicked. He just saw it as a bad thing. And so we were spiraling. And then on his birthday, I mentioned that I was like, I don't know who you are. I don't know what this is. He was just angry. He was hard. He was short-tempered. He was negative. And I was just like, get your life together. How many people in your life are you in conflict with? Every single one. Name one person that you're not in conflict with. I think I was, but here we were, like, he was in conflict with everybody. And I could just see that the devil was just eating him up. And so way back in the beginning of our marriage, when he was like, you just need to forgive me, I kind of handed that to him of, get your life straight, because I don't know what this is. Get right with God, because I can tell that you're not. And he responds to that. And I'm not that kind of, I'm not a bitty wife who, nags and gets after him. And he's admitted that he needs that. And he's like, and you're not that. And he appreciates that sometimes. He can take that direction. I would cower. I would start to cry. I would, you gotta be delicate with me. But even when I said that to him, it was out of love. It was, I don't know. Anyway, that was his birthday. That was the end of December. Our on and off, that didn't happen. He said he wasn't going to play that game. He didn't want rules and restrictions on our sexuality. And I didn't view it as rules and restrictions. I viewed it as boundaries. So we were at an impasse. Like, okay, what are we going to do? Okay, so that was at the end of December. And then a few weeks later, things weren't better. And we were in an argument mid-January. Our Christmas tree was still up. So I mean, it could still be July, but no. I don't think I've made it to July with the Christmas tree up. I think I was close once, but no. So this was still in January. It was early mid-January where we weren't getting better, we were getting worse. And Sam was also, I'm just going to throw this out there, but Sam was taking some medication. And I swear it was demons. He was taking Adderall, and he had for years. I did not like what Adderall did for him. He liked it because it helped him. He's absolutely ADD, absolutely. He liked it for obvious reasons, to help him focus. He's a school teacher. He knew right when to time it, to get him through his day, to be his best, and what students, what classes he was the strongest at, and it always correlated with his medication. And the problem with Adderall is, by the time he came home, and then the evenings it had worn off, that's when it would change his personality. He would be extremely negative, critical is the word, and grumpy, and it was the end of the day, it's coming off, and so I got the worst of him. And his students got the best of him, which I'm glad it was that way. And I figured it out when there was a pattern. We would have the same fights at the same time of night and the same day of the week. It was like he almost became so predictable by his medication. And I told him that. I told him that I could, his eyes were different. He was like, I did tell him once that he was not obsessed. I did tell him once that when I look at him, I don't see him. I see demons. His eyes were dark. He was mean. He was just, it was not the loving Sam. And so he, with medication, with this trauma therapy, and then his wife putting rules and restrictions on sex, he was he was not happy. And we were in a fight back to the Christmas tree. And it was about sex again, because he just, he is a very sexual person, and he craved that release and that connection with me. But I could see that it wasn't about us. It was about fighting these demons. It was about him fighting the hard things that he was dealing with. And I wasn't going to concede to that. This is when I felt Heavenly Father tell me to set a harder boundary. And because Sam wasn't conceding on the on and off. I'm like, I have solutions. I'm not saying this is a sexless marriage. I don't want that. Here's my solution. What is your solution? And he didn't come back with a solution. He just wanted to take that off and be like, why can't it just be organic? And yeah, that's what I wanted also, but we weren't there. So we were in rehab, and that didn't go well, and he was upset, and he didn't like my idea. He didn't have an idea. So I said, until you have an idea, I'm setting a boundary. So since that didn't go over well, I set the boundary of all boundaries, and I set it with love and with confidence and with God nudging me to do it. And that was, it was not an elevated, a heated conversation. It was just, we were stuck, just like I was explaining. And sorry, I keep saying this over and over, but this was my idea. We do on and off. We have scheduled heavy sexual days, and then the next week it's heavy on off days, and then back and forth. That was my solution. What's your solution? And he didn't have a solution, and he didn't want mine. And so we were not he was being stubborn, and it wasn't going anywhere. And on top of that, it's after this is when I said, Sam, we are never having sex again. And at the time that I said it, I could not believe it came out of my mouth. That's not what I wanted. I don't want to have a sexless marriage, but it was. And as I was saying it, I was thinking, what is going to happen to us? Like, is that the end of us? That's what Sam said. He's like, what are you saying? And I was like, I don't know. I was speechless myself, but I was not doing it to punish. I was not doing it to create a bigger problem. God just firmly said, set this boundary. And as I said it, I honestly was thinking, I'm just setting myself up to be a hypocrite. Of course, are we really never going to have sex again? That is the one thing that I never dared say to him, ever in our marriage. That's why I suppressed. That created so many resentments on my part because I didn't dare say that. But here I was, absolutely confident in the delivery, but not in the understanding. And it shocked Sam. It hurt Sam. And then then it was over. I was like, we're done talking. We kind of needed to separate ourselves. This was off of, like, our conversation had just gone in circles for a couple of hours, like we really weren't going anywhere. It was a couple of hours. And so this was at the very end. And then it was like, I'm done talking to you. This is not in negotiation anymore. I need to get away from you. I need some space. And I went away thinking, what has happened? Right as things started to change for Sam, when I said like the last 6 months, it all had to do with our sexuality. It just shifted. Something was off when it was so beautiful and good. And then the message that I got back then was, Sam needs to fall. Let him fall. He needs to pick himself back up. He can do this alone. Meaning he doesn't need sex as his crutch. He can't escape to sex. He can't escape to Ember. When he's stressed, he can't turn to sex. That's what was happening. He was stressed. He was doing hard things. He was turning to sex to make it go away because that was our safety place. That was our beautiful safety net for both of us. And he was bringing that in, and that's when it started to change. And then, God said, let him fall. He needs to pick himself up. So that's another, 5 months. And then that's as things started to just disintegrate with our relationship. And I didn't know what that meant, let him fall. I knew it had to do with the sexuality, but it still took several months for me to see the bigger picture and see what was happening. And so when I set that boundary was part of my understanding that Sam needs to pick himself up. He needs to deal with this instead of coping through sex. It made sense to me. But what didn't make sense was how our marriage was going to continue in that. I just laid down the biggest boundary in our marriage, that we were never going to have sex again. I didn't have a plan to divorce, and I feared that if I didn't give Sam sex, that he was going to leave me. That started our marriage off that way, that he was serious about sex being a part of our marriage, and if I didn't perform, then I most likely was going to lose him. Like, I was afraid of that. So here we are. So that's what I mean when I didn't understand. It's like I got bits and pieces, but God was guiding me through it. I didn't do it out of fear or manipulation. And what happened next? So that was mid-January, Christmas tree still up. So jumping to the next month of February, Christmas tree wasn't up. It was Valentine's Day, and we still hadn't had sex, and we were back to eggshells, and it was kind of like watching our marriage die. It was hard because we were familiar with this life also, the falling apart and the things aren't going well. That was our more normal than the good, beautiful connection. And so it's kind of like our marriage was starting to so relapse. We started morphing back into what we were before, of the disconnect and the sex stress. And Sam was doing more therapy and self-improvement stuff. He was doing the 12 steps. And he, as always, when things go wrong in Sam's life or things get rough, he always turns to this book. He always turns to the 12 steps to figure out, to get himself out of a mess. And I mean, I don't want to say that I had no part in this, but I really had no part in this. I was watching Sam, my other half, struggle in something that he needed. I couldn't fix it. I can't. This is another beautiful part about the 12 steps, is you've got to keep your own side of the street clean. And I mean, we know how the story ends. Sam only had a few months to live, and he had some garbage to clean out of his lane. And God was facilitating this. He was helping, he was making it happen. And I was facilitating it too, not truly understanding it, but knowing that I had a role in loving him and supporting him with boundaries, which is huge in the family support. The other part of the 12-step programs for family members who have loved ones who are going through addictions. That's what I'm a missionary for now. That's the manual I work on all the time now, is how we don't enable people in their addictions. And mind you, Sam is not in an addiction of the traditional sense of drugs and alcohol or porn or anything like that. But I will say in this instance, he was turning to sex as an addiction, as a fix. He was turning to, which there's nothing wrong with turning to your spouse, in moments of love and support and encouragement and healing. I am all for that. But this was not that. Maybe, the first few times it was, but I just watched our relationship fizzle. And when there was conflict with us, because there was conflict in everybody, all his relationships, he just brought that into the bedroom. And so that became the problem. That's where I did not know how to set boundaries before. And this was, I'm seeing my husband going through a hard time, and I do have the Spirit helping me to help him. And to make that make sense, Sam only had, so if we go back to, December's his birthday, when I'm like, slay the demons, be the demon slayer. We go through, not difficult, it's just we're not connected. And after having the connection that we had for so long, it really sucked to just be like, oh, well, back with my old boyfriend again, it's this stupid relationship. That's where we were going. But end of December to the end of January, that's 1 month. The end of January to the end of February, that's 2 months. He dies at the end of February. So for 2 months, but after, in January is when I say we are never having sex again. So for the last month of Sam's life, his reality is, I'm in a marriage that my wife says we're never going to have sex again. And that's devastating to him. And he has some big self-reflection moments here. He can't come to me and really counsel with me because we're in conflict. He does some inward stuff. And he goes to step 8. And he makes a list of all the persons that he has harmed. And he tries to make restitution. And I'm on the sidelines. I'm kind of unaware. I'm not in his life. I'm stepping back. And as he falls and starts to pick himself up, he does it by writing a list. And he had a sponsor, as most people do in 12-step programs. You have a sponsor that helps you along. And he had a sponsor in our neighborhood, a neighbor, a man, a guy who he loved and respected so much. And he went to him and confessed. What's step 9? Wherever possible, make direct restitution to all persons we harmed. So I'll go into that next time, but it's kind of gonna ebb and flow through both of them, these next 2 videos. That I have Sam's notebooks. He had these little manila, like little notebooks, and he would use an entire notebook. I wish I had. Anyway, it's not like a thick notebook, but one notebook for step 1. And then the next notebook was step 2. So I have over 12 of these notebooks where he solely focused on that step work and just pages. And the pages are not even lined. They're like the graph paper, dotted, very faint dotted, not even lined. And he would just fill his notes and thoughts with that. But during these last few months of his life, I think God was pricking his heart to repentance. I don't know for sure what exactly Sam did do, because we weren't connecting, talking every day, even these last few months. And he was going to therapy, and it was kind of like a repeat of our marriage repair those first 6 months. I wasn't even sleeping in the bedroom. I was removing myself from him completely. And it gave him some time to make that list. And I'm not kidding. I named off every family member that he was in conflict. He had issues with everybody. And that's when I was like, this is not an us issue. This is an you issue. And he took it to heart and got to work. So now we're at Valentine's Day. And he plans a date for us. And it was so lame. It was like we were like a signed court order date. It was awful on Valentine's Day. And it wasn't going well. We couldn't talk about anything because the talking was just, we weren't connecting. Until I remember I was so mad that it was, have you ever tried to like, no matter what we said, it was just conflict. It wasn't, we just were not landing. It was bad. But it was like we were on a date, and so I couldn't leave the room because he arranged, it was a date. It was a date. You know, we got dinner, and then we didn't even talk to each other. It was just like We had nothing to say to each other. We were not connecting, but nothing was happening. And so we were just like sucking the life out of each other, just sitting there. And if I got on my phone, he's like, oh, so you're going to sit on your phone now? And I'm like, well, we're not even talking about anything. So I put my phone away, and then it was just like, what are we doing? Like, we were just miserably sitting there. That's how our Valentine's Day went. And then it was time for me to go pick up my daughter from work at like 10:30. And I was so glad, because I was like, get me away. Like, the date's over, right? And he's like, can we talk when you get back? And I was so mad. Because Sam Hobie talks are not short talks. And I didn't want to talk. I didn't want to. Because we had just spent 4 hours together and we weren't talking. And so now that when it was time to break free, he was like, can I have 10 more minutes when you come back? I was so mad. I told him, we are setting the timer when I come back for 10 minutes. I was mad because we had sat together for 4 hours and accomplished nothing in talking. And then at the very end, he wanted to talk. So I'm crying on the way to get my daughter. So frustrated. And I'm tired. And so I get home, it's like 11 o'clock. And I go flop back down in front of the fireplace where we've been sitting, nothing. And something about him had changed. His whole presence, everything was different. He was softer. He was kind. And I was like, timer, go, you know. But I could feel the air was different. His look was different. And I'm willing to bet he spent that 20 minutes while I was gone praying. I know he did. Because God can soften Sam. Sam does let him in. And he was different. It was like he invited the demons to leave because Sam was different then. And so our conversation started at 11 o'clock at night on Valentine's Day. And it didn't get over until 5:30 in the morning. And I just want to say that on Valentine's Day, you know, I was prickly. I was being the porcupine, and he reached out to our daughters on Valentine's Day, made it special about, just reached out to them. I've never really loved Valentine's Day. I think it's stupid that they celebrate that in school. I think that's really stupid. And it's a love holiday, and I don't think it's about kids. I think it's about adults and relationships. And so that's never really been a thing in our family. But I do like the idea of expressing love, you know. So for the month of February, I've always done I love you days for our kids, where I would pick a child and it would be their I love you day. And it was, you know, all about them. I love you type thing. Not Valentine's Day. Valentine's Day was for me and Sam. That's, you know, the love thing. So that's how we ran the tradition of Valentine's Day. And so this year, Sam, I was not available to him. And he wrote letters to our daughters. And he would not have done that if we were good. He, in that course of the month, reached out to all of the people that he was in conflict with. Oh, I started to say that he went to his sponsor and had a list of every memory he could keep that he could conjure up every memory. I remember seeing him sitting on the table. He did tell me that I would get bits and pieces of what he was doing, but never, I wasn't in the whole process of this, but he did let me know that he was working, he's going to the well, he's going deep. He would sit and he would almost not make up, but if he even had an inkling of a memory of something that he did wrong, as far back as he can remember, he put it on the list. And he was going hardcore. He was going to clean his slate, and intensely, as Sam does. And he had done, he's done the 12 steps a billion times, but this time he was doing it like he was going to meet God. And that's actually in the end of step 9. In the action steps, it's prepare to meet God. Like, deal with your crap. Prepare to meet God. And that's what he was doing. And I know that his meeting with his sponsor went long. And I know it was hard. I know it was hard because there was a lot of shame entangled in his childhood and adolescent years, and he was not going to leave any of it. He was talking about it, anything he could think of. And I know that how he made that list, how he came up with that, those were nights where he was alone, where we were not sleeping in the same room, and he was facing his demons. He was digging up memories, anybody he could think of. And he wrote letters, made phone calls, and just did his best. He just followed the instructions on the 12 steps of how to make direct restitution. And then those that he couldn't, I know his mom was on that list. There was a lot to do with his mom, that you can write a letter, and, to somebody who's passed or whatever. I know he was going to therapy because he was taking these to therapy. He was doing a lot of trauma stuff with his therapist about his mom. And the night before he died, he had a session about his mom. But on Valentine's Day, he did share with me a little bit about that experience of how humiliating and hard it was to face those memories, face those demons of his past. Some adults in his past, it was really hard for him. And this is the conversation, after midnight on Valentine's Day. This is where my heart goes out to him, because he's doing hard things and he's doing it alone. And right there is just what God was telling me, is Sam needs to pick himself up alone. And of course, I'm not thinking of this at the time. This is in hindsight. This is since Sam has passed that I'm putting pieces together and thinking like, wow, God had a plan, and Sam had a mission. He needed to get some stuff done. And Valentine's night, that was a really cool night, because it was him letting me know that he's choosing me, not sex. that for the past month, his reality is that he's in a sexless marriage and that his wife never wants to sleep with him again. He doesn't know he's going to die. He doesn't know that that's not going to be, well, it's not going to be short-lived for either of us. But right there, Sam could have up and bailed. I had a phone call I had to pick up, but I don't know for sure where I was, where I left off, except that I was crying. So, I think I was saying that Sam realized that he had a choice of, am I in this marriage for sex or am I in this marriage for Ember? And on Valentine's Day, he told me that he was in this marriage for Ember, not for sex. And if that's what I wanted, that was fine. And he fell back on the 12 steps and what he learned in our reset, that he was going to be the kind of husband that he wanted to be, not the kind of husband he thought he deserved to be treated as. And so he had some work to do, and he knows that I have some concerns about him being a narcissist. And he started investigating that. He wanted to know, is he really a narcissist? Now, a narcissist wouldn't do that. So, at times, I'm going to say when Sam is full of demons, he's a narcissist. When he's working hard to follow Christ, no, he's not. And so part of our conversation on Valentine's Day, that he wanted to get to the bottom of this narcissist thing and see if he was, and address that. And so he did. He took that to his therapist and wanted to know if he was, and worked on that for a while. And then one night, I think it was just a couple of weeks after. Now we're in our time frame of 1 month left of his life. So we have our December, I'm saying, I don't know what's wrong with you, get right. In January, I'm saying, we are never having sex again. In February, he is recognizing, I want marriage, not sex. So if it's a sexless marriage, I'm still in. I'm all in. And am I a narcissist? And then I think it was just the next week, and I was sleeping down on the couch because I couldn't sleep in the same bedroom as him. And he came down one night, and he had been up all night. And he came and sat down on the couch, and he woke me up. It was like 6 a.m., 5 a.m. And he was crying and told me he'd been up all night, and I thought something was wrong. And he was crying and saying that he thought he was a narcissist. What he had uncovered and researched, yeah, I'm a narcissist. And why was he coming to tell me this? Because in our first marriage fall apart, that was a big deal. That it was the book that I was reading was Should I Stay or Should I Go? Surviving Relationship with a Narcissist. So him being a narcissist is a big deal because he thinks that I'm not going to stay in a marriage if he's a narcissist. And he was so humble. he learns this truth that he thinks is a truth, that yeah, I do have narcissist tendencies. Amber, are you going to leave me? We're in a sexless marriage. We're never having sex again. And I'm a narcissist. And I had already made up my mind. I'm not going anywhere. I'm not going anywhere. Hence the boundary. You know, so things are kind of coming together. It's still not really making sense. Like, I'm wondering, can it really stick? Are we really never gonna have sex again? And I mean, the right opportunity hadn't presented itself. It's not like we were in a spot where we both were willing and could have, and then it was like, oh well, nope, I said no. Like, that never happened. We hadn't resolved our conflict yet, and Sam was still in this turmoil of just past things that he was dealing with. And so now here we are, like some major issues of our marriage. Does he want... So for Sam, the major issue is, do I want to be in a sexless marriage? And then for me, do I want to be married to a narcissist? Like, that's the reason why I was going to go before. And this was the reason why he was going to go before. So it came back full circle again on top of our beautiful relationship. It just boiled up. And what are we going to do with it? It's like God circled it around again and gave us a choice. Sam, what would you do if your wife, who you love and have an amazing connection with, what would you do if she said, you cannot have the very thing that you live for, the thing that makes you the happiest? No more sex. Are you going to stay? And then mine, Ember, what if your husband admits that he is a narcissist? What if all tests come back and say your husband is a narcissist? After the connection that you've had, after the renewal and the marriage that you finally got to, what if it's proven your husband is a narcissist? Are you going to stay? We both had our worst nightmares plopped in our lap again. And he made his decision separate of me, and I made my decision separate of him. And with God, I don't care. I don't care if you're a narcissist. You know, boundaries. Now I know what I'm dealing with. You know, it's like getting the autistic diagnosis on our kids. It wasn't like, oh my gosh, they're autistic. It's like, yeah, I've figured that out by now. So I mean, this confession of Sam saying that he's a narcissist, it wasn't a blow. It's like, yeah, I know, okay. Knowledge is power. Now I know what I'm dealing with. Now I know how to work with you. I'm not going to reject you. I'm not going to run from you. Like, that's where I was. Now things make sense. You know, when he was fighting that he was, and we got in a lot of fights about him being a narcissist, about other people hearing me say that he was a narcissist. And then I'm defending that he wasn't a narcissist, but I'm like, but wait a minute, you are a narcissist. And sometimes it served me and sometimes it punished me. Like, that's what narcissist was in our relationship. And then on his side, it was the sex thing, and then the boundaries. And so we each had to come to grips with what is our marriage to us. And so as Sam's sitting next to me, crying on the couch, he had been up all night and had been taking all those tests, you know, your self-evaluation tests if you're a narcissist. And he was devastated. He was devastated that conclusively he was a narcissist. And to him, that meant I wasn't going to love him, that I wasn't going to stick around. And my heart broke. and at the same time healed, because it was like, okay, we're on to something. Now we can agree. Now we can agree. And I didn't have any plan to run to divorce. I didn't. It's just like, okay, now I know what I'm dealing with, and I can still love you. So, you know, it was just a matter of time for us to come back to each other. And then I think we're down to the last 2 weeks of his life, and the last week of his life he was in Arizona for work training. And we had a project that we were working on together, and that was setting up the girl version of a man cave for me, because we found a solution. I am overwhelmed with Sam's sexuality. I need boundaries. I need a place to recoup. I need a place to introvert, to get away, because I feel so smothered. And Sam loves fiercely, and it's like I got to be away from him, not touching him, or else I'm all up in him and all over each other. And so I literally needed a break. I needed to separate myself off, and I needed my own room where I was not running to escape. Did I just say I needed to escape? I needed to meaningfully recharge and not feel like I was running from my husband all the time. And so this was on Valentine's Day. So things started to shift with us on Valentine's Day, where I was just expressing what I just said, that I'm so overwhelmed by your sexuality that I need to know when I will get a break. It's like, when is your cup full? Like, his cup never got full. It was always a need, always a need. And when it became overwhelming for me, I didn't have a break. And that's where, boundaries were needed too. So, but he didn't want the boundaries. And so we were finally coming to a conclusion. Because remember back when I was saying, this is my idea and my boundaries, what are yours? And he's like, none. Now, this is on Valentine's Day, we had come to, we were going to make it wasn't our extra bedroom, but we were going to make an extra bedroom. Our daughter had a bedroom that I loved, because it had beautiful light coming in through 2 windows on each, on the south and east side. But her bedroom was in there, and I wanted to kick her out into another bedroom that was available, and make that my bedroom, my own space, literally a bedroom where I could go and close the door and recharge. And nobody was allowed in there. Sam wasn't going to come in and try to, have a sleepover with me. The kids were not going to go in there. It was like as if I was checked into a hotel, which that's what my fix had been, that I would go away to hotels. And I didn't want to be leaving. I said, Sam, I just want a restarting place where I can go and recharge in a meaningful way, so that I can return and be a better mom and a better wife to you. But I never got that break. I never got that break when I was sleeping next to him, because he was all up in me all the time, which is amazing. But for an introvert who, in that atmosphere where he was very needy emotionally, physically, intimately, and then my autistic kids all day long, it's like, I need a break. I literally need to shut a door, and I would be happy as ever in a closet where nobody's touching me. Like, I just need a break. And he got so excited about that, and he was like, yes, we're kicking Abby out. And it was funny when I told her that we were swapping rooms, she's like, no, I'm telling Dad. And I'm like, it's Dad's idea. Dad says get out, and she was like, because she knows that I'm his babes, and what I want, I get. And so while he was in, it was that next week while he was in Arizona, I was moving Abby out and creating my own room, and he was so supportive, and he was so excited for me, and it just made sense. And that's what he said. He's like, it makes sense. It works now. But when we were trying to talk about it, when he was in a wounded and a vulnerable and a threatened and he was in a hard spot, that, you know, creating an atmosphere for space was scary and bad, red flags, and it's going to ruin us and all of this. On Valentine's Day, we came up with this idea together, and he was so excited. And I'll leave that to get into the next video, of me creating a solution. It wasn't me. Sam and I came to a solution, and it looked like it was providing an atmosphere, an avenue for us to come back together. But I also knew that I said we are never having sex again. And then I thought, well, we'll see what happens. And that next week he is gone, and then he's home a half a week. So we never did have sex again, but we were both faced with our worst nightmares, and we chose each other when we both had an out. We both had an open door to leave the marriage cleanly. Sam had every reason to be like, my wife has declared no sex ever again. And he chose me. And my husband came to me and admitted that he was a narcissist and gave me the ticket to leave him. And I chose him. And God's hand was in it all. It just took time. Gosh, I wonder what Sam, I would love to know his thoughts about how that was total prophecy, and how that all went down. So, all right, that was a long one. I hope that went over well. I haven't shared that story. That's kind of, I want to mull on that some more. I mean, it's a beautiful story. Understanding it, that with agency and boundaries, I mean, that's how God treats us also, is we have boundaries. Stay in the boundaries. Sometimes we don't want to, but so recap, Sam was fighting demons, and God was providing him with an opportunity to get right just in the nick of time. I can't believe how close that was. And although it didn't make sense to me, my heart felt safe in setting the boundaries, and I heard God tell me, let Sam fall. He needs to pick himself up by himself. Not understanding, but just going along with it, looking for clues, looking for signs. And it all made sense months after he died. So his timing, it unfolds slowly sometimes, but I think I just kept looking. Don't write God off so quickly. Like, I just kept looking and trying to make sense and sharing the story. A lot of it's these videos and, you know, following the timeline and, you know, being honest. Because I'll tell you what, the day he died, I carried some fear and some shame, realizing I wasn't even sleeping in the same, like, the detective in my house asked me how he slept the night before. You know, was he okay? And I was like, I didn't even sleep in the same room as him as him last night. Like, part of me wanted to hide it. What is happening? What does that mean? You know, that's not how I want the ending to go. But the truth of, you know, it's like I didn't, actually, I think I've only told one other person that before. But the past few months, as I've been working through the stories, I've seen the dots connecting and the messages, and that made sense to why God told me back in July that when our sex stuff started coming up again, that made sense why that started happening then. And then, like, the story unfolded. But if I didn't want to see that, if I wanted to hide that, if I wanted to stuff that, I would have never learned this. I would have never connected the dots to see, like, we've got to stick with God long enough to see him answer things. But that was hard. That was kind of, I wanted to hide that. I felt ashamed when the officer asked me. He was real good about it. I was like, I don't know. We're not sleeping in the same room. And he was like, oh, it happens. It's okay. You know, he smoothed it over. And he's like, marriage is hard. Like, he didn't make it. He was great about it. But I was like, that was hard. That was hard because what was happening and what does that mean? And, you know, what that says to the outside world, what does that mean? Like, I wanted to hide it. I'm sharing it because it's beautiful. And there's still even a little bit more to that. So now they're all just meshing into one big hodgepodge of step 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Gotta get through these though. I said I was gonna do 1 step a week, so that would be 12 steps, 13 steps with the introduction. I started that January 1st. This video is happening in the middle of May, so it'll get done. I want it to get done because I kind of feel this momentum right now. I feel I'm headed towards something. Something's coming up, so sharing these, dissecting this verbally is very different, even though I am more of an introvert and I write to process my feelings and emotions way more than I verbally do it. But since Sam has passed, I have done way more verbal therapy. Just this is therapy for me. I've done way more verbal than I have written. And it's stretching me. And the reason why I've chosen to do verbal is because it reaches the emotions that are hard for me to say. Saying my emotions is harder. Writing my emotions is easier. This is forcing a new depth of my experience. The very first time I turned the camera on and faced it to me and started talking to Sam, I knew instantly that was something important and meaningful because it triggered these emotions that they don't surface when I'm writing. I do cry when I'm writing, and I feel like I really go to a deep level when I'm writing, but this hits it does something different to me. And when I talk to Sam, I get migraines almost every single time. So I know it's doing something. I know that's something. And I'm taking it for a healing. I decided that I was going to name my emotions. I was going to name my grief. I was going to express my grief. When I had it, I wasn't going to suppress. I did too much suppressing and not being in touch with my emotions for our 23 years of marriage. And so I just took a lesson from that experience, that feelings buried alive never die. And I am turning into more of a speaker, and Sam was that. I don't know what this is, this verbal connection I'm trying to keep with Sam when I talk to him, but it's I don't know how to explain it, but it's doing something, and it's real. It's keeping him alive, and it's my theme of living between heaven and earth. When I talk to Sam, when I talk to a camera, when I talk about our story, I'm keeping Sam alive. I am living between heaven and earth. This right now, I am living my life without Sam, but I'm between. He's with me. It's that space between heaven and earth. Now I'm turning into a weirdo, but I don't know what's happening. I'm just going with it, and I trust that God's going to do something with it. So thank you for enduring this long video, and yeah, that was a hard one. That was a hard one, and I'm glad I shared it. I'm still processing it. So anyway, thanks again. I will see you next time.